Okay, so this is The Army and the People by V.I. Lenin. This is 1906. Let's go ahead and get into this. All the newspapers continue to teem with reports about the movement along the armed forces. It is difficult to calculate now in how many regiments or military units there have been unrest and revolts during the 2 months of the Duma's work. In regard to military affairs, too, the notorious peaceful parliamentary activity which not always naive, by the way, bourgeois politicians have invented has resulted in methods of struggle and forms of the movement that are by no means peaceful and by no means parliamentary. In publishing facts and reports about the movement among the armed forces, our liberal bourgeois press usually uses this material only for the purpose of intimidating the government. The cadet newspapers usually argue as follows. The conflagration is spreading. Look out. Beware, gentlemen, members in the cabinet. Yield to us before it is too late. And the cabinet ministers retaliate through the medium of Novoye Vremya and the other Serval newspapers by trying to intimidate the cadets. They say, look, gentlemen, the conflagration is spreading. Come to an understanding. The conflagration, I'm not sure how to say that word. The conflagration is spreading. Come to an understanding with us before it is too late. Both the cadets and the government regard the movement among the armed forces as proof of the necessity of taking immediate measures to extinguish the revolution. Their short-sighted outlook, which is largely prompted by their selfish interests, prevents them from seeing that this movement is a most important index of the real character of our revolution, of its real aims. Both the cadets and the government are each pursuing their own selfish interests in the question of the army. The pogrom mongers need the army as an instrument for pogroms. The liberal bourgeoisie needs it to protect the bourgeois monarchy from the excessive encroachments and demands of the peasants, and particularly of the workers. The vulgar, hypocritical, and false doctrine that the army must be kept out of politics is particularly convenient for concealing the true designs of the bourgeoisie in this field. But look at the character of the unrest in the armed forces, at the demands that the soldiers are making. Try to regard the soldiers who risk being shot for, quote, insubordination, end quote, as human beings who have their own independent interests, as part of the people, as men who are expressing the urgent needs of certain classes in our society. You will see that these soldiers who stand closest to the politically least developed peasantry, who are drilled, downtrodden, and browbeaten by the officers, that these are, quote, dumb brutes, end quote, that these, quote, dumb brutes, end quote, are going to immeasurably further in their demands than the cadet programs. The cadets and the Cadet Duma like to claim they are voicing the demands of the people. Many simpletons believe this, but look at the facts. Look at the demands the broad masses of the people are actually making, at the struggle they are actually waging, and you will see that the cadets and the Cadet Duma are curtailing and distorting the demands of the people. Look at the facts. The men of the Preobrazhensky Regiment put forward the demand, support the Trudovik Group in the struggle for land and freedom. Please note, not support the Duma, but support the Trudovik Group, the group which the cadets accused of, quote, grossly insulting, end quote, the State Duma by introducing the land bill of the 33 deputies, which proposed to abolish the private ownership of land. Obviously, the soldiers are going much further than the cadets. These, quote, dumb brutes want more than the enlightened bourgeoisie. An infantry regiment in St. Petersburg demanded the following. We soldiers, this is a quote, we soldiers must be allowed to elect our deputies to the State Duma, to voice our soldiers' needs, end quote. The soldiers do not want to keep out of politics. The soldiers do not agree with the cadets. The soldiers are advancing a demand that obviously amounts to the abolition of the caste army, of the army that is isolated from the people, and its replacement by an army of free and equal citizens. Now, this is exactly the same thing as the abolition of the standing army and the arming of the people. The soldiers in the Warsaw area are demanding a constituent assembly. They are demanding freedom of assembly and of association for soldiers, quote, without the consent of presence of officers, end quote. They are demanding that, quote, military service be performed in the soldiers' native districts, end quote. The right to wear civilian dress when off duty, and the right to elect soldiers' representatives to supervise the soldiers' mess and to act as judges to try offenses committed by soldiers. Does this in any way resemble the cadets' conception of army reform? Or does it come very close to the institution of a national and fully democratic militia? The soldiers are voicing the real demands of the people, demands that are common to the overwhelming majority of the people. Far better than those gentlemen, the enlightened bourgeoisie. The character and the main features of the movement among the armed forces express far more accurately the essence of the main and fundamental forms of the struggle for emancipation under present conditions than the tactics of the cadets. The movement of the workers and peasants confirms that even more strongly. Our duty is not to attempt to squeeze this movement into the narrow limits of paltry cadet politics, not to degrade it by adapting it to fit paltry cadet slogans, but to support, expand, and develop it in the spirit of genuine, consistent, determined, and militant democracy. So, the cadets, they kind of remind me of, the more I read, Lenin talk about the cadets, he almost describes like our liberal Democrat Party here in the United States. I don't consider it real democracy. I don't consider liberalism democracy. I consider it kind of a performative democracy that happens every 2 years, 2 or 4 years. But our liberal Democrat Party is constantly trying to push for, more bureaucratic rule in the name of like virtue, like virtuous virtue signaling, And, because the military is looked at as like, oh, they're the government. Somehow they're not the ones who are, the ones taking, somehow it's like, it doesn't matter that they're not the ones that are actually taking money from the corrupt bureaucracy in our country. That, like he says here, that they are the most likely to come from the peasantry. And that's very true. Out of high school, being promised a career, young people get into the military, that way. And, they oftentimes are kind of misled through things like our bourgeois media, through the bureaucracy of Washington, D.C., the corruption inside of our government, to where, the most, what the state comes down to is a physical authority, and that physical authority has to be given to the people. But when that is bought out by these private defense contractors, and they can make money off sending people off to war, to drop bombs or planes or go through missiles or whatever, there's no way it should be that. There's no way that the people's government, the point of authority that the government boils down to, is the authority part over society. There's no way that should be up for profit. And, the liberal parties, either one, will never ever acknowledge how disgusting it is that people can profit off what's supposed to be the people's government, the people's authority, not the bureaucrats' authority. And so, they paint these aesthetics of, right wing, left wing, left wing is the best because they're virtue signaling, right wing is the best because they're for that old traditional way, when in reality they work for the same people and they get paid by the same people, and they might reach different crowds, and they push the poor people into each other, the left, right, the poor people have to play that game with them. But when they go get their lobby checks, they're the same party. And it just think, if people think that lobbyism and party donations, and even, having full say over everybody's production, even, is, if they think that, that doesn't manipulate a politician, like, go into, your work, and when your employer tells you to do something different, and don't do what your employer tells you to do, and see what your employer does. Your employer will replace you and put somebody new in there. And the same works with our politicians, and the same works with our media in the United States, that if they don't do what they're told, what they do for money, You know, whoever gives them the money that gets them elected to fund their grassroots movement or whatever they're doing with it, to fund media ads or campaigns or to grow their business of being in our government or, you know, or being the media, whatever that is. If they don't answer to that, they replace them. You know, it's the same thing, and there's no way. I think everyone can agree, no matter where they are on the line of socialism, between socialism and, you know, here I think that, you know, it's just the average person here sees no reason why prisons should be for profit when that's supposed to be our national security, and why our national defense is for profit. Why those are corporations. That's our security. And what are they doing with it? Nothing that's actually making this place a better country. So, yep. I have more respect for the military member who wonders why things are the way that they are, you know? Because it's no longer about being good and being bad. And they like to say, this person's good, this person's bad, this person, you know, but in reality, it's not. It's about why things are the way that they are. And I have more in common and more respect for a military member any day of the week. You know, I have friends that were in the military, you know, who, you know, joined in high school and is wondering, why are things the way that they are? Why did I have to do that? Why was this? How come nobody explained this to me? I have more in common with them than somebody who could just hop out and go sell all these virtues to the community and then take all the money from the people who are profiting from wars. I will never have respect for those people. You know? I mean, some don't consciously do it. Some, you know, get tricked into grassroots for like the liberal parties. But the ones who know what they're doing, who know that they are just doing this for their donors, and that as long as they go out and do public relations for, you know, the bureaucracy in Washington, that they'll be fine, you know. I'll never have respect for those people. People have to come together. And because they get paid with that money, they get paid with that capital, but it's our labor that physically generates that capital, and that is what we have over them. So thank you all for tuning in. You know, Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, TikTok, Tumblr, Medium, all of these are Marxist. Y'all have a great day. Dodada Goi.